Hey, this is Gary.
This is Mike.
And Daniel. We're not professionals. We're just three addicts sharing our experiences, strength, and hope regarding recovery.
Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to other addicts and to practice these principles in our lives.
Welcome to another episode of the 12th Step Podcast. This is Daniel.
And this is Mike.
And this is Gary.
All right, so we're working on episode 3 of our fast-firing questions. We have 3 remaining questions we're going to go over. So the first one here is, it just says recovery tools. It doesn't say much more than that, so we're going to discuss other types of recovery tools that are out there. I know we've talked about several in past episodes, but
sure.
We can probably talk about a few other ones out there that maybe we haven't talked about.
All right. What's some of your favorite tools to use?
Well, some of the things that I really found worked well for me. We've got to use a safety net whenever we travel. I think that's some of the things that really was helpful for me. I didn't realize how my addictive mind reacted when I left town. That was a big deal for me, and in my addictive behavior and acting out times, I was thinking, yes, great, I'm out of my zip code, I'm going to go act out, I'm going to do whatever. And even through recovery, I discovered even that it took some time. I had to have a very solid safety net to keep me safe as I left home to travel. That was a big deal for me. Some of the other things I found, the group reaching out, a sponsor. I can't tell you how many times I reached out to my sponsor saying,
accountability partner. That's not
yes,
fair.
An accountability partner. Sorry about that. I learned something from a friend, one of our groups, who mentioned that when he traveled, he took the TV out of his room, and I learned very quickly that if I dismantled the TV, if I made it inoperable, I didn't actually take it off the wall and take it downstairs, but that was a big deal for me. That was when in fact, my latest relapse was when I was feeling cavalier. It was March Madness time, and I wanted to watch some games, and I had the TV brought back in, and that's when I relapsed of all times. So staying true to those safety nets, reaching out accountability partners, all those sorts of things are, as simple as they sound, are big tools.
Yeah, another phrase for safety net, or it could be a safety plan.
Sure.
Some people might go, what's safety net? Yeah, but both are the same. For me, a few things that I have found that have been great recovery tools, gratitude journaling.
Oh, that's a good. That was
I
also
a great one.
I do that every day. Besides just the gratitude part, I also put affirmations in there. I write my thoughts out, whether they're good or bad. I put it out there so they're not sitting inside me, festering. And then I can always go back and look at those things. Picky, that's something from Stage 1. So
personal craziness index.
Sometimes I don't use it as much as I used to, but when things are getting a little crazy, I'll pull that out just to monitor how things are going. I know it wants it for 12 weeks, but I'll run it for the gamut of when things are stressful, just so I can see what I'm missing and not. And this last time things happened, I realized I wasn't washing the dishes as much as I should have, and there's a couple other minor things that I was missing out on. And after doing those things, I realized, it's amazing how much, even though it's not perceptible, your body is still stressing on those things. Clean dishes, my mind, my body is just not worried about it anymore, and so that brings my stress level down. So those have been great things. Reaching out, that's always a fantastic one. So the accountability partner. Another one that I enjoy using is meditation. Meditating, doing mindfulness practices, whether that's just going on a walk, listening to some music. Last couple of days has been amazing weather. I've taken my dog for a walk on my lunch break. It has dramatically dropped my stress level. So it's just simple things like that. It doesn't have to be huge things, but these small things are recovery tools as well.
So some of my favorite recovery tools is listening and sharing this podcast over and over and over again. All right. It was a self-serving joke.
Yes, it was.
It's fine. No, actually, a qualified therapist was a big one. Good.
I'm surprised. I mean, that's a great qualification too, to say that they're qualified,
Yeah.
because I can't tell you how many are out there getting counseling help by somebody who may not be qualified in this area of expertise.
So qualified therapist is a great tool. Group therapy, 12-step program. As far as little personal tools, I love the gratitude journal. I loved fire drill was one that I really liked. Relapse chain was also really a good tool. Having a developed support system was probably the really, I think the ones that helped me out the most were the ones that influenced me to have healthy connections with other people. The 12-step group, mentors, mentoring, group therapy, good therapist, that kind of stuff. I think is.
I'm going to add one. Go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't
No,
mean to
that
cut
was
you
it.
off. The one I want to add as well is first order changes. I think that's when somebody, particularly in today's space where we have so much accessibility to trouble on our phone or internet, a first order change is the difference between somebody who's going to make it and somebody who's not. That's a real dividing line when someone says, I am not, I don't want this accessibility like I have in the past. So for me, that's a monstrous step for somebody to move in the right direction, to say, I gotta cut this off. And that is a monstrous tool. But when somebody can finally realize that, look, I've got too much access to this and I'm not capable of handling all that access, and I'm willing to do something about it, that's a monstrous tool. Because that opens up the door also for second order changes, which we've obviously spent time on in podcasts. But the point being is that first order change is a monstrous tool and a monstrous step.
Yeah, it is. Okay. Should we move on to the next question, or do you think, are there any other recovery tools you guys
Oh,
want
I'm
to
sure
throw out?
others will come up. We'll throw them out there. If
All
they
right. All right. So the next question is how do I stay out of my inner circle?
make better choices.
I love how you should have been here, Mike. He was like deadpan. Make better choices.
Daniel, you served a T-ball there. I mean, you just
I
set
know.
that one up beautifully. Throwing beach balls here to Gary, who's just waiting to slam that one out of the park,
I
right?
know.
I know. I've been waiting all night for it.
If only he could have, done it like Ben Stein. Make better
Yeah.
choices.
Make better choices.
Make better choices.
Yeah.
Do you know? Okay. The very first, I think the very best thing how to stay out of the inner circle is to identify what your inner circle is.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Which, by the way, is also the 3 circles is a great recovery tool.
Yes. Yes, it is.
So let's throw that out there. I told you some more would come up.
Yes, they did.
So knowing what your inner circle is and what your middle circle is and what your outer circle is. And then, man, make your outer circle fun, good, healthy, because you'll get to the point where that's where you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of going into your inner circle is not only terrifying, but it's also repugnant. And it's like, I'm not doing that again. That never worked.
No.
That's interesting you bring that up, because there's a monstrous shift in thought that goes on from the idea we spend so much time in recovery worrying about finding ourselves in our inner circle that we at some point in time we start, there's a shift that goes on when we say, I'd rather be in my outer circle than worrying about not going into my inner circle, if that makes sense. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
And that's a really critical point in somebody's recovery path. When they stop worrying about sliding into their inner circle, their middle circle, no, their inner circle, they stop worrying about going into that, and they start worrying about getting out of the middle circle that they're in, if that makes sense. And it's a big deal. That's a critical point.
For those of you who are a little farther into your recovery, something that I have said many, many times to the people that I mentor is quit your middle circle living.
Yeah.
If you want to stay out of your inner circle, quit your middle circle living. Live in that outer one, because and then, there really is a lot to, and it takes time, but identifying what is in each circle and then really making your life the outer circle is, no, that's just, like I said, man, that's where you want to be.
That's right. It's a great tool. And I will tell you, as one of Gary's mentees, I don't know that I ever heard "Stop Living in Your Middle Circle." Let me count that on my hand. How many times I heard it? It was thousands of times. I'd call up and say, "Gary, he said, stop living in your middle circle."
Make better choices.
Yeah.
Like, it was so simple.
Because it is that simple.
Yeah, that's
just-
right.
it's just
Did you ever
as-
hear that, Daniel? Have you ever heard
yeah.
that in your
Yes.
life? I mean,
Yes.
I mean,
Do the next
that's
right
that
thing.
will go
and,
down
yeah.
in one of the. That will go down in all the books of Garyisms. I'll remember that one forever. Well, stop living in your middle circle. Well, if I knew how to do that, I wouldn't be here.
Yep. I mean, but the crazy thing is, it is that simple. You know,
It's just
It
that
is.
simple
it,
and
it
it's
really
just that
is.
hard, but yes.
You know, middle circle is just a slippery slope. You know, towards the middle. You know, and it takes effort to trudge your way up and out.
And do you know what? It's fair, and you do got to give yourself a little bit of grace, because you know when I first said find out what these things are, you know, that's not necessarily a given or as easy as you think it is.
Yeah.
You know, defining what's in
Right.
your middle circle and what's in your outer circle or inner circle. You know, there are a couple of obvious things that are very, you know,
Yeah.
clear cut and straightforward, but there's a lot of things that are quite nuanced, and it takes a little time and a little practice to really find out what they are. And some things move around.
Well, I mean, you know, Mike has mentioned it many times where, you know, he went to the sports page.
Yeah.
That seems normal. That seems like a not so bad thing.
At that time in his recovery,
Yeah,
it was
at that time in his recovery, excuse me. But that was a middle circle item
was a
that made
big
him
middle circle
sliding down the hill. And but so, you know, and that's something we all have to look at. What are some of the things that may look on the outside like that's a normal, okay thing, but really it is a middle circle item that sends us sliding down towards the inner circle.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and
Yeah, my addictive behavior always started out in a very simple, innocent place, and I suspect it's that way for everybody. But my
Sure. Oh, yeah.
mind, I had in a very real way developed a pathway, a neural pathway, if you will, of behavior. I start here at a very benign, innocent place, and I find myself in a bad place every time. And a lot of times, not even sure how I got there, other than the fact I just got there.
yeah. Well, I mean, how many people have we mentored and spoke to where they were like, yeah, just in the bathroom, and they took their phone into the bathroom, and then next thing they know, that I acted out, you know, and those are
Which
simple,
brings me back to
benign
Gary's
things.
point. Which brings me back to Gary's point, right? Make better choices.
Yeah,
Make better choices.
Yes.
Don't go into the bathroom. Don't go into the bathroom with your phone.
yeah. No, my phone doesn't go into the bathroom. You know, and I used to carry it all on me all the time. Now half the time it's on a table, or it's no longer in my pocket. It's no longer on me, and so I'm not constantly worrying. I'm not feeling it vibrate or it ring, and so I don't have to worry about those things. When I'm done doing what I'm doing and being present in that moment, then I can go check it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, before we had cell phones, we had a phone hanging on the freaking wall, and
Yeah.
it would ring every now and then. But we weren't constantly like, "Oh my gosh, I got to check the NBA scores. I got to do this or I got to do that." But something changed along the way where we were constantly going back to that resource and looking at that. And our addiction, it's like, all right, you're looking at this. Oh, hey, look at that ad over there. Click on it. You know, and you ignore it for a while, but then you click on it, and then it takes you somewhere else. And you just keep sliding down that slope.
I will tell you that in my world, that was a sign of healthy behavior when I finally walked away from the phone. Part of the reason why is because I was communicating with people I shouldn't have been communicating with in my addictive behavior, and so I never let anybody look at my phone. That was a no-no.
Oh, yeah.
My kids, my
Yeah.
my wife. That was just no. You didn't do that. And I remember screaming a time or two at anybody who looked at my phone, and it was always with me. So it did go into the bathroom. It went everywhere with me for those reasons. And so I can't tell you how relieving it is not to worry about that sort of stuff.
It was one of those realization second order changes when I realized, what did I do with my phone? And I guess I don't care. I'll find it in a minute. It's fine. You know, no, that was like a huge thing. It's like what I said that, you know, because That never would have happened.
Oh yeah, no, it never would have for me either. And now, like, I don't even care because there's nothing on there. Like, my kids pick up my phone, like, they're just going through photos, or they're like, "Hey, is there a game on here?" I'm like, "No, there's no games on there." Why isn't there any games? Like, because it's a phone. They don't get that, but like in the past, if someone would have picked up my phone, like my whole body would have reacted.
Oh, for sure.
In like
Immediately.
yeah. And now it's like whatever. Yeah, I don't care if you have the phone. And that's a great place to be.
It is a great place to be.
You know, and to further on with the same question, you know, because you mentioned earlier, Gary, you know, make your outer circle items so much fun to participate in and to be a part of. And I agree. You know, if you're living in those things and being present in going to a concert, in the park, you know, the three of us have done that before. Going for a hike, going for a drive, all those positive things that get you away from that inner circle, that just make sure you don't even go into your middle circle. I found for me so much more joy in life participating in those, and more opportunities have developed and come out of the fact I'm not constantly in my addiction. Mm-hmm. I'm open and honest in finding more opportunities, and it's fantastic. I think our first episode of the year, we kind of went over that, where how well we're doing in recovery has translated into, you know, how busy our lives have become, but it's been a positive way and not a negative.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Okay, let's move on to the last and final question, which is, what lies beneath my addiction that I'm hiding from? I think that's a personal question for everyone.
My goodness, what lies beneath my addiction that I am hiding from?
I'll start with this.
Okay.
Because I think as my recovery continues on, that understanding deepens. Mm-hmm. I think on day one of my recovery and walking in, I would answer that question, and I would answer that question entirely different on day one than I am now on day whatever. But I will tell you the things that I've discovered here just very recently is that I have a very, very significant fear, and I think I've shared this in a previous episode, of abandonment and resentments. Mm-hmm. This whole sense of I just don't connect well to people in ways that I would like to, and I have fear of abandonment, and I have fear of abandonment to some extent even in my own marital relationship. I don't have a relationship with my parents like I should have. I don't have a relationship with my kids like I should have. And all of those personal relationships, and I know the problem is me. That's the realization that I've come to more than anything right now, is the realization that the problem is with me. It's not with others. Mm-hmm. Up to this point in time, I've always thought that my problems lied with them. Hey, this is their problem. They're the ones who are not reaching out, not doing whatever. And even as late as today, I had a great conversation with my wife, who pointed out a couple of things that were really helpful for me in resolving some of this. So that's some of the deep-seated stuff that takes me way, way back, that I'm finding answers to now, and finding being the base root of maybe some of my addictive behavior from a long time ago.
Yeah, I mean, for me, a lot of it was I was afraid knowledge about the abuse I suffered as a kid would come out, because of those things. I always thought that I wasn't that great of a person. I was this horrible child, that my parents hated me, and because of that, because I would watch TV shows like Leave It to Beaver, and I would see how the Beav's dad always wanted to do stuff with him. My three sons, and how Fred Murray would always want to do things with his kids, but my father would not. And my mom would sometimes pay way too much attention, and be very codependent, or she'd be the exact opposite and be very distant and void. Or when they got too tired of being a parent, they'd drop me off at my grandparents. So there was abandonment stuff going on there. But, and then on top of that, I always wore long sleeve shirts and pants to cover up the bruises and hide the things that were going on at home. And I never felt like I could open up. My religious leaders, anytime I would go to meet with them, they would always be, you should really thank God for the parents you have. which set up this really awkward and bad relationship with God and my higher power. Because it's like, wow, that's what he gave me. So there was a lot of things that created, my addiction to hide from the things that were going on. And so that was what was lying beneath it. And then I grow up, I become an adult. I don't know how to interact with a spouse. I don't know how to interact with emotions because my emotions are all messed up, because if I tried to, if I cried, I'd get smacked, quit your crying, or I'll give you something to cry about. Or if I try to open up and be vulnerable, I would be shot down and I would never be validated. So I didn't know how to do those things. And it was just easier to shut that down and avoid it than to try to learn otherwise.
As far as mine goes, do you want to go, Mike? You got something?
No. I'm sorry.
As far as mine goes, what lies beneath my addiction that I'm hiding from? There are a lot of reasons why, but I think the thought or the belief that I'm not enough.
Yeah, that was definitely there.
Probably in the most basic, boil it down, oversimplify it kind of a way. This idea that I'm not enough. You know, for and then add different kind of flavors or toppings as you like. But I think what it really, really boils down to was that kind of a thought. I'm not enough. Which, or variations on it.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring up something that Carnes points out in Sage 1, and that weighs heavily on what it is that Gary's identified and some of the things that I think all of us have touched on in that whole sense of not being enough, whatever. But one of the things that Carnes points out is that if a person is willing to engage in sexual activity with a prostitute, pay for sex kind of a situation, that it's a very clear indicator that it's simply easier to give up on the relationship that already exists and move towards a relationship that we can control. Something along those lines is that, and I'd have to read the actual paragraph, but it's very, if one is willing to look at the kind of behaviors, the acting out behavior that they engaged in, says an awful lot about the world around them and the universe that they're living in. And I think that's exactly what it was for me. It was basically saying that I would rather invest in a relationship monetarily, invest in this relationship with this individual or create this individual with this individual, rather than try and fix the relationship in which I'm already in, which is a really kind of twisted way of saying that's pretty jacked up. And I think that says an awful lot about what we're getting at. For whatever reason, we're not getting at least in my universe, I can talk about me, I'm not getting the satisfaction out of the relationships that I'm existing in right now, that I'd be willing to go to that path and go down that path and invest in something else. That's pretty insightful. Because it weighs on my mind when I start thinking about the fact that I don't connect with people, the really important people in my life, the way I want to. And I think that's kind of what Gary's hitting at as well. It's that sense of I'm not enough. I can't be enough in this relationship. I can't be enough in any relationship. I think, Daniel, you weighed on it as well. What that sense of I'm not significant enough in the eyes of my parents. All of those things. That's a very deep insecurity for all of us.
It is, and I've reconnected with a lot of friends that now know my story, and a lot of them were like, "Wow, I never knew this was going on, but it always felt like there was always more to you, but you would never open the door for us to come in." And it's because we're afraid. And I even going to talk to them, I was terrified that I would lose them as a friend. I would never hear from them again because they'd be terrified and run for the hills. Our relationship is actually more stronger now because they know the truth, because they know the challenges, the difficulties. I have a good friend that I've known since 7th grade. If he doesn't hear from me within 2 days, he's always I get a message. How you doing? Are you okay? Even on when things are good, he's still checking in. And I do the same thing back, but it's because he knows, and he knows that even though I'm doing well, that thought still bubbles to the surface now and then. And he just wants to make sure that things are still okay and I'm not like running down rampant down the rabbit hole. And so it's really nice to have that. But I think probably the most common thing is at the bottom of everyone's, underneath everything is some sense of belief or feeling of I'm not enough.
Yeah.
The whole I am statement stuff.
Yeah. Which is difficult. It's really hard because, those core beliefs that are built when you're young like that are just so entrenched beneath everything that's built up on top of it. And so it's hard to get to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Deep thoughts.
Yes. Well, anything else you guys want to add? Because we are, we've already ran through those 3 questions in time that quickly. Is there any last?
I just at some point in time I want to figure out where that comes from. That's a piece of my recovery. I hope I really work into, because right now I'm just scratching the surface on that and realizing that that's the base core feeling and concern that I have. But I came from I didn't experience the abuse that I hear Daniel talking about. I didn't. You know what I'm saying? There's so many things in my existence that I wonder how. I mean, there were some comments that were made, and I grew up in an incredibly religious home, and I grew up in and I do remember my dad saying, you keep up that crying, I'll give you a real reason to cry about. So there were times when I was struck. There's no doubt about it. But I didn't wear a long sleeve shirt to cover my bruises. If that's you see what I mean. So I felt like I grew up in a very normal household for the time, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But so I want to know why I just didn't connect in a deep and meaningful way, and why I can't connect now. Those are things that's the curiosity side of this addiction that I want to keep working with.
Well, and that's the really interesting thing about this. For me, like, I've known most of my life I was an accident. My dad didn't, and his family didn't want me. My grandparents didn't want me. Like, I've been told, I was told from a young age that they wanted my mom to get an abortion because she was still in high school. And, so there's all these messages, you weren't wanted. Which automatically a kid's gonna be like, well, I'm not enough. I no one wanted me. Fast forward to my youngest daughter, she's kind of dealing with some of that type of thought process. This last weekend when I had her, she's like, she was being frustrating, and we were having this conversation. She's like, fine, just throw me away. And I'm like, whoa, where did that come from? Like, I've never said anything like that. Or, I can't deal with you. I'm going to get rid of you. But she threw that out. And that, if I wasn't in the healthy place I was, I probably would have, ignored that or just barreled through. But that really profoundly struck me. Like, okay, she's dealing with similar feelings. Where is this coming from? Is it something I've said? Is it something I've done? Being introspective to find out where that is, because I want to curb that as much as possible, because I know where that leads. Half of the situation I can't control when she goes back to mom's house, but I don't know of any time that I created that environment. So it's interesting, like what you're saying, you had a great home, you had a pretty reasonable life, unlike what I experienced as a child. But there was some defining moment. There was something said that cemented. There was something that happened that somehow translated to you, I'm not enough.
Well, do you know, I came from a great home.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of funny because the phrase that stands out most to me in my recollection was, I remember once my mom would tell people all the time that I was this golden child, and she used the phrase, he can do no wrong. And the way that I internalized that was, I could do no wrong, meaning I wasn't allowed to make a mistake. I couldn't.
But then when you did.
But then when I did, I it drove into secrecy or things like that. So I can't say that I ever experienced any kind of physical abuse. I said, and nor did my mother mean that to land the way that it did.
Correct.
In fact, when I had the discussion with her years and years later, as I started recovery, and I mentioned that, she says, you understand that that's not what I meant at all. I was always so, and I go, yeah, I do. But so, you talking about your daughter is, just remember that other people have votes too. And
well, I know.
yeah.
And that's it, is something, I must have said something, or I must have done something that she internalized it that way.
Yeah.
And so that's where it's like, oh, I want to figure out what that is so that I can nip it in the butt early before it's a problem later.
Right.
Like it has been for me. But it's interesting how something, like yours, it was never meant that way.
No.
But that's how you internalized it, and then it became a crux of
And
your
so,
problem.
And so then when I did have problems, I didn't dare talk to anybody about them. And in fact, my solution wasn't, I'm going to take this to the grave, and if required, I'll send myself there too.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So yeah.
There was a phrase in my family as well. I remember my mother telling me a time or two that I was too sensitive.
Okay.
Which isn't, obviously recovery is all about getting in touch with your emotional side and, understanding your feelings and things like that. To have a mother telling you that, being connected to any of that stuff is not a healthy thing. That's not what we would expect from a boy or whatever. You know what I'm saying? But all of that, so the messaging was wrong. But I come back to the fact that, wow, does that really, those few comments, is that really what I hung my hat on for my entire life? To say, okay, I'm now justified in the behavior that I've engaged in at this age? Does it, because I think, just like Gary said, I think my mother really intended it to land the way it did.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I just don't know. That's the side of me that's the side of me. It's a new discovery as of late, and I'm very curious about, and I want to keep exploring because I want to understand that.
Well, and that's the great
and more
thing.
importantly, I want to understand how to fix it.
Yeah, and that's the great thing. If you're asking this question, what lies beneath it, start digging.
Yeah.
Start paying attention to yourself and
be ready
asking
for
those
layers.
questions. Yeah, and you'll find something. You'll work on that, and then you'll be healthy enough that you can dig some more and dig some more. It's a process. I remember talking to our counselor Shane just recently, and he's like, "Yeah, I've had to rework on something that I didn't even think was possible, and now that I'm in this new situation in life, these other things are coming up." And so he's what, 35, 36 years in his recovery.
Yeah.
So it goes to show that this is, like we've mentioned before, this is a part of your life moving forward if you really commit to it, and it's something you'll constantly be working on. It's not something that you get to a point, Mike said it many times, stick a fork in it, you're done, or you're a ham and you're cured. That's what it is. Yeah. It's something you keep doing.
Exactly.
So, yeah. But all right. Well, this has been great. We've gone through 3 great episodes with these questions. If there are any more you guys have, please let us know. Reach out to us. You can email us at 12steppodcast at gmail.com. You can reach out to us on social media. We love hearing from our listeners. We've gotten several great emails that have prompted great discussions, so we'd love to hear from you with that. So I'm going to wrap this up by saying this is Daniel and saying find humility in your recovery.
And this is Mike saying do the work necessary to find the peace that recovery can bring.
And this is Gary saying do the next right thing.
Thank you for listening to the podcast. If you like this episode, please give us a 5-star rating on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you find us.
As a fellowship of recovering addicts, Sex Addicts Anonymous offers a message of hope to anyone who suffers from sex addiction. Check out saa-recovery.org.